All right, get ready because we're taking a deep dive into some pretty fascinating creation ideas today. Specifically, we're looking at the Genesis story, but in a way you might not expect. It's a blend of science and scripture. We're tackling this YouTube video, Creation Pre-Adamica la Creación de Dios. It's by Dr. Armando Alducin. Get ready for a fascinating take. It's all about the Genesis creation story.
One thing that really jumps out about Dr. Alducin's take, it's his focus on Genesis 1 and 2. He claims these chapters, they hold the key to understanding the entire Bible. He really dives into those specific Hebrew words used for creation, bara, asa, and yatzar. He says those reveal different nuances about God's creative act.
So it's like there's some kind of hidden code in the language. That's so cool. But for those of us who don't speak Hebrew, what's the significance?
Well, he points out that bara, it implies creation out of nothing. And it's used in two really important places, for the initial creation of the universe and for the creation of the human soul.
So that suggests there's something unique and powerful about our souls.
Right, this idea that they come directly from God, like they have something special, setting us apart.
Wow. It's like bara points to a direct connection between us and the divine, like a spark of the creator in each of us. So what about those other words, asa and yatzar? Do those also reveal something deeper?
Absolutely. Asa means to form or fashion something, something that already exists. Think of a potter with clay. This highlights God's craftsmanship, shaping and refining.
Okay.
And then you have yatzar, which implies an even more intricate process, like artistic. He sees this as especially important with humanity, suggesting a very intimate and detailed approach.
Okay, so putting it all together, we see different layers of God's creative power. First, bara, creation out of nothing. The universe aimed at our souls. Then asa, to shape the world around us. And finally, yatzar, God as this master artist, carefully crafting humanity. Now, Dr. Alducin also mentions this idea of a gap between verses 1 and 2 of Genesis. Can you unpack that a little?
This is where things get really interesting. Dr. Alducin suggests that gap represents a vast period of time, potentially even billions of years, between the universe's creation and the world described in Genesis 1.2. He even points to a passage in Isaiah 45.98. God says he didn't create the earth in chaos and emptiness. That's tohu vabohu in Hebrew. He argues this is something happened within that gap. Something changed the earth's state. Before the 6 days of creation.
Wait, so he's saying there was a whole pre-Adamic world before the 7 days of creation we usually think of. That's a pretty wild idea.
Yeah.
What does he think was happening during that time?
Well, this is where Dr. Alducin introduces angels. He believes the pre-Adamic earth was inhabited by them, and that the chaos and emptiness in Genesis 1.2, it was a result of something happening within this angelic realm, maybe even a rebellion.
Whoa, a rebellion of angels. Talk about adding some drama to the creation story. Does he have evidence for this?
He does. Look at Job 38.47. God asks Job where he was when the foundations of the earth were laid. Dr. Alducin interprets that as implying an audience of angels there at creation, which supports this idea of a pre-Adamic world full of angelic beings, and he connects this to the rebellion, saying their fall led to the chaos described in Genesis 1.2.
So if this pre-Adamic world had angels, who led the rebellion? Is he talking about Lucifer?
Exactly. Dr. Alducin goes on to discuss Lucifer and his fall from grace, focusing on Ezekiel 28.1-13. This passage describes Lucifer dwelling in Eden, adorned with precious stones. What's interesting is the parallel he draws between those stones and the stones worn by the high priest in the tabernacle.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. So he's suggesting Lucifer wasn't just any angel. He had real authority, maybe even comparable to a high priest.
Precisely. He's suggesting Lucifer might have had a crucial role in the pre-Adamic world, maybe leading worship or protecting God's sanctuary, which makes his rebellion even more impactful.
This is getting really interesting. So we have a pre-Adamic world. Angels, rebellion, and Lucifer right at the center. It's like a whole cosmic drama unfolding before humans even show up. So where do we go from here? What happens next in this story?
That's a great question. And that's exactly what we're going to explore in the next part of our deep dive. We'll delve into the consequences of the rebellion and how Dr. Alducin connects this ancient cosmic drama to humanity's place in the grand scheme of things.
Okay, so we're back and ready to continue our deep dive into Dr. Alducin's interpretation of the Genesis story. Just a quick recap. We're exploring this idea of a pre-Adamic world, inhabited by angels, and a huge rebellion that happened before humanity even showed up.
Right, and Dr. Alducin believes this rebellion, with Lucifer leading it, had a major impact on the world as we know it today.
Yeah, and remember, he sees Lucifer as this high-ranking angel, maybe even an angelic high priest, which makes his fall from grace so much more significant.
Something.
It wasn't just some random angel causing trouble. This was a major player in the pre-Adamic world. So what does Dr. Aldusin say caused Lucifer to rebel against God?
Well, it all comes down to pride and ambition, that classic story we see so often. Lucifer wanted more. He wanted to be like God, to have all that authority and rule over everything.
That age-old desire for power, even when you already have so much. What about the consequences of this rebellion? What does Dr. Aldusin say happened?
He says they were catastrophic. Lucifer's rebellion threw the pre-Adamic world into chaos. It even led to divine judgment.
Okay.
He links this to a global cataclysm, a flood that reshaped the entire earth.
Hold on, a flood. Is he talking about the flood with Noah's Ark, the one described later in Genesis?
That's a great question. Dr. Aldusin seems to be suggesting there were two separate floods.
Really?
The first one, tied to the angel rebellion, resulted in the Tohu Vabohu, remember, that chaotic and empty state from Genesis 1.2.
Right.
And then later you have the flood with Noah, which has a different purpose in the story.
Wow, two floods, each marking a turning point. It definitely changes how you see the Genesis account. So what happens after the first flood then? The one that wipes out the pre-Adamic world.
Dr. Aldusin proposes a recreation. He sees Genesis 1.3 onwards as a deliberate act by God to restore order and beauty to the earth after the devastation of the rebellion.
So God starts over.
Exactly.
And creates a new world, this time for humanity. But why?
He thinks this recreation wasn't just about starting fresh.
Okay.
It's about setting the stage for something new, something profound. He believes God created this world specifically for us.
Wow.
For humans, created in his image.
What?
To ultimately demonstrate God's power and wisdom in a way that even angels couldn't.
That's a powerful idea. But if this pre-Adamic world existed for millions of years, how does that fit with science? What about dinosaurs? Or the age of the Earth?
Well, this is where it gets interesting. Dr. Aldusin doesn't shy away from science. In fact, he accepts things like scientific dating methods. He doesn't hold to a strict young Earth view. He argues the Bible doesn't actually say how old the Earth is. Instead, it focuses on the 6,000-year history of humanity.
So we can believe in an ancient Earth and still hold to the biblical narrative.
Exactly. He believes a nuanced understanding of both science and scripture can actually give us a more complete view of creation.
That's thought-provoking. It definitely opens up new ways of looking at things. But it also raises more questions, like where do dinosaurs fit into all of this? Were they part of that pre-Adamic world? And if so, why were they created? It doesn't seem like Dr. Aldusin addresses those questions.
You're right, he doesn't in this video. But his interpretation definitely opens the door to those questions.
True. It would be fascinating to hear his take on that. But even without the dinosaur mystery, this idea of a pre-Adamic world is pretty captivating. It adds a whole new dimension to the creation story. So let's recap what we've covered. We started with this pre-Adamic world, inhabited by angels, including Lucifer as a possible high priest.
Right.
And we talked about his rebellion, sparked by pride and ambition, leading to a cataclysmic flood.
Yes.
And after that flood, God initiates a recreation, setting the stage for humanity.
And this recreation has a purpose, to showcase God's power and wisdom, with humanity playing a key role.
And we talked about how this interpretation can actually reconcile the Bible with scientific findings about the Earth's age,
Exactly.
suggesting both contribute to our understanding of creation. Okay, so now the big question. How does all this connect back to us? What's humanity's role in all of this?
That's the question, isn't it? And that's what we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive. We'll look at the implications of this pre-Adamic world and what it might mean for us,
Yeah.
for our understanding of ourselves, our purpose, and the forces at play in the universe.
Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into Dr. Aldusin's take on the Genesis story. It's been quite the journey, exploring those Hebrew words for creation, then uncovering this whole idea of a pre-Adamic world with angels, and even a rebellion led by Lucifer himself. It's a lot to take in. But now I'm really curious about what Dr. Aldusin says this means for us, for humanity.
That's the big question, right? After all that talk about angels and cosmic drama, where do we fit in? Well, Dr. Aldusin suggests that humanity, we're actually at the center of this cosmic battle between good and evil, a battle that started way before we showed up.
Wow.
He believes God put us on earth with a very specific purpose, to overcome the legacy of that angelic rebellion and demonstrate his power and wisdom in a way that even angels couldn't.
So it's like we're the heroes of this story, the ones who come in and change everything.
It is kind of like that. It
Okay.
really raises the stakes.
Mm.
Our choices, our actions, they're not just about us anymore.
Right.
They're part of this much larger cosmic drama, this struggle between good and evil. Dr. Aldusin seems to believe that humanity, we have this potential to tip the scales, to bring harmony back to the universe
Out.
by choosing good over evil, aligning ourselves with God's will,
Okay.
ultimately showing the triumph of love over things like pride and ambition.
That's powerful. Makes you think about your life differently.
Definitely.
Knowing our everyday choices could be part of something much bigger.
Exactly. Makes you wonder, what would it look like to live with that awareness? To make choices not just for ourselves, but understanding our role in this larger struggle.
That's a great question. It adds a whole new dimension to living a purposeful life. But to be honest, some people might think this interpretation is a bit out there. A pre-Adamic world. Angels rebelling. Lucifer as a high priest. It's a lot to wrap your head around. What would you say to someone who's skeptical about all this?
Well, I think it's good to be skeptical. It's important to question and think critically.
Right.
But even if someone doesn't buy into every detail,
Yeah.
there's still a lot to take away from it. The core themes he talks about.
Yeah.
Good versus evil, free will, overcoming pride and ambition. These are ideas that resonate across cultures, throughout history.
You're right. Whether you take it literally or see it as a metaphor, it definitely gives you a lot to think about.
It does.
Makes you reconsider those Bible stories we think we know.
Yeah.
And maybe even see ourselves differently.
Exactly. That's what's great about exploring different perspectives. It challenges us to think outside the box, to consider new possibilities, to expand our understanding of ourselves and the world.
Well said. This whole deep dive has been really thought-provoking. It's given me a lot to ponder. What about you? What stands out to you as the most impactful takeaway?
For me, it's the focus on humanity's unique role in this cosmic drama. We're not just watching.
Yeah.
We have the power to choose, to act,
Yeah.
to influence this battle between good and evil. That's a powerful reminder and a challenge for all of us.
I totally agree. I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive. But before we go, one last question for you and for our listeners. Does this concept of a pre-Adamic world, this battle between good and evil, change how you view the world? Does it make you think about the unseen forces at play? And most importantly, does it inspire you to live your life differently, to play a more active role in this grand story?
Those are great questions to consider. I encourage everyone listening to think about them. Maybe this deep dive sparked something new for you, or maybe it challenged some of your beliefs. Either way, this is just the beginning of your own personal deep dive.
That's right. So keep exploring, keep questioning, keep seeking truth wherever it may lead. Thanks for joining us.